Hello guys, we are here with Eric Ling, what can only be considered the most famous and important game designer of our generation. Eric, how are you doing,
Most
man?
people don't know this, but I'm quite famous.
So
You probably don't know this, but this guy's famous.
we had a chat with you at GenCon, of course, and
did.
answered some questions.
I remember, I think, most of it.
Yeah, some big questions.
It was pretty sick.
Tell us how is life since GenCon? What's been going on for you? How you doing?
It's awesome. Second verse, same as the first. Making games, publishing games, playtesting games, watching my games get ripped apart, put back together.
Yeah.
Since GenCon, I think I've released 2 more games, I think. I just learned 5 seconds ago that there aren't as many Star Wars packs in the real world than I thought.
Nice.
That is correct.
Sorry?
Is there anything in particular that you'd like to tell us or the people about that's come out with your name on it recently?
What have you been working on?
So Arcadia Quest from Cool Mini or Not is it's either just been released or about to be released. That was the second big Kickstarter game I did with them. Lots of cool minis or not.
That's well played, sir. Well played.
Little cheapy. It's a hardcore Necromunda Mordheim inspired player versus environments board game with but it's done with cute little cheapy art and fun little names and little sort of 15-year-old in jokes, which I love the game. It's high skill and high luck.
Nice.
And very, very multiplayer, take that, beat each other up. That game's coming out really, really soon. I don't know if there's anything else I'm allowed to talk about. I mean, there's obviously Dice Masters.
Yeah.
Dice Masters, I think they just released
The
X-Men set just came out. There is rumor that another set that we worked on might be coming out before end of the year. I don't know if that's actually true. Like, you guys probably know better than I do at this point.
Yeah.
I just finished designing Dice Master set number 7. So, like, we're pretty far ahead.
So, like, once you have designed, developed, kind of laid the foundation of a game, is it generally that you kind of like, see you later onto other projects, and then
See ya.
and then it's like, well, if this ever comes out, if I happen to see it, that's really cool, and if not, then no big deal.
Well, not really. I'm pretty involved in every game, especially every lifestyle game I do. Like LCGs or the big box games with lots of expansions. I'm pretty involved with the publisher right up until release. And I'm usually even the first expansion or so, I usually either do the principal design or highly involved in the initial design. So in that sense, no, I'm pretty much always there. But once it's gone to the printer, then it's bye-bye, right? But then I'm on to the next thing, and then I have no idea when it gets released
What happens with it?
There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
And even though I really don't do that many games. It looks like I do, but it's sort of an optical illusion, right? Everything I've worked on the last 2 years came out in the last 4 months. So yeah, it's hard for me to keep track of what comes out in one time.
Well, something that's interesting to keep track of is the Star Wars LCG meta.
Surprisingly.
We know that you had a big hand in the core set and other things for this game, other design things.
And the game itself.
And the game itself, of course. You were a big hand in that. But we just saw one of the most interesting finals matches for this game ever.
I know, I missed it. I'm so sad.
We had the mixed dark side deck. It had no Vader in it, which was I had seen nothing but Darth Vader all day. Darth Vader,
Sith
Palpatine,
and no Vader.
Sith with no Vader, and then secondarily was running Trench Run on the Rebel side of things, and was doing crazy stuff with it, and the shields and the pulling stuff off and damage, and so.
Did he throw an Ewok at the Death Star to win?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. So
my work here is done.
When you're looking at these cards, right, and you're developing this core set, and cards come down the pipe and things happen. What is it like to see that kind of interaction from cards that you've designed, working with maybe newer or other cards that you've designed in a way that either you didn't see coming or none of us saw coming?
Right. Well, I'm always. When I'm working on a game, especially an LCG, I always try to make sure that there's enough uncertainty on the development side, that there's like if we can't see all ends, great. Because if we can, the game is too shallow. Right? If we can solve it in 3 months, the three of us in the room, the internet's going to solve it in a day. So there has to be enough uncertainty. As long as the foundation is very solid, there has to be enough uncertainty from our end that there's a possibility for rogue decks to come out. Right? We have a pretty good idea of what the archetypes are going to be because that follows what we do, but they don't always look the same. And they don't always play the same. Objective sets being what they are, there's a little bit more forced variance in the game.
Yeah.
So, if you're asking, did I see Ewoks being shot into the Death Star coming? No, but there was a part of my crazy fever dream when I put together Trench Run that Trench Run was one of the very, very first cards I ever designed for the game. Right? Because it was, after I put everything together, it's like, there's gotta be the run at the Death Star. There's got to be an alternate victory condition. You got to be able to blow up the Death Star, and that's got to be in the core set. And I'm a big fan of what-if stories. I'm a big fan of people doing things that has nothing to do with our design intent. And if it's funny, so much the better.
Like Ewoks.
Like an Ewok being chucked into the Death Star. So I'd love to tell you that, oh yeah, Ewoks into the Death Star, Worlds 2014, right? But no. But I definitely am a big proponent of, like, knowing that card was there. I knew that there were going to be situations where they chucked Leia at the Death Star, or Ewoks, or Chewbacca, which well, not so much Chewbacca, but like Wookiees.
That was me.
I saw it as a possibility. I didn't see it as a tier 1 possibility. What happened today was
awesome.
Mind-blowing, right?
So since we're on the topic of Star Wars, one thing, especially when the game was first announced and the first couple of months of the game, the whole objective system is something that created a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
It was different. It wasn't just your standard deck building process. As the creator of that, there's a lot of people that still feel like it limits them too much or it forces them to put bad cards into their deck. As the designer of that, what would you say to those people about the objective set system and why it enhances the game instead of takes away from it?
Well, that's an excellent question. I love tough questions.
All right, I can keep going.
All right. Why do you make crappy games? So,
They know.
I mean, frankly, it's not for everybody, right? There are legitimate complaints about how the objective system works, and it's not like I didn't see them coming. Like, I knew that they would be complaints, and I'm not going to necessarily say the objective set system is better than a regular deck building system. It's different. And this is part of the vision of Star Wars. And this is all part of like why I did this for Star Wars as opposed to another game like 40K Conquest or something like that. It was the big gamble that I took. And when I say I mean it was my pitch, but FFG was brave enough to take the risk. The gamble.
They could have played it safe, right?
Right.
Standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we all agreed that Star Wars had the biggest breakout potential, right? It's Star Wars. It's a Star Wars living card game. So we assumed that this game, more than anything else, had a chance of being seen on Target, shelves at Target, or Barnes & Noble, or Borders, whichever one's not closed.
Yeah.
Right? That has that into core mass market or otherwise. And it was my assumption that this game would be, because it would be so widely played, even though it is a hardcore game, like it's a hardcore high bluffing game, that I wanted to be able to make sure that deck building, which is the single biggest barrier between casual, even casual core and LCGs, would be something that would be theoretically, right? Even like theoretically, if not actually, easy to cross, right? You just go like, I take these 4 objective sets, I'm done, I build my deck. After that, so that was gamble number 1, right? Most people are just going to want to build. They want the feel of customizing their own deck, but they don't want to count every single card, because for us, right? For us, itemizing a deck card by card, evaluating every single card, one-for-one basis is, I mean, that's second nature, right? That's not true for the casual core. It's crazy. So that we wanted the number one easy barrier to entry. When I played around with the system in the abstract, when I was like playing around with decks, it occurred to me very quickly that the decision-making process is actually, again, it's not, I wouldn't say it's better by any stretch, it's just different. The evaluations that you have to make are still, especially when you play at our level, I'm sure you guys do it too, you're still evaluating card by card.
Absolutely.
But you're evaluating cards in the context of the objective set and in the context of, and their own value, right? So I've actually heard people tell me that it's more difficult to choose objective sets now that there are more packs out. I imagine there would be more packs out too, like everybody else did, but that's more difficult than it is just to evaluate card by card. So I saw that coming too, and I figured that's different, right? And it's not for everybody, and if you don't like that, I apologize, but that was the decision that we made.
Sure.
And we're not going back on it.
I'm curious, the whole barrier to entry thing, I think that's the first time I've ever heard it put that way, and it makes a lot of sense. As a designer, designing in the objective set system, what did that allow you to maybe experiment with that you couldn't necessarily do in other games because of, like, if you make a really good card in Thrones, it's a really good card that is always going to get played. Versus in Star Wars, maybe as an example, a really good card with 4 not good cards.
Right.
Is there anything like that came to light the more you started developing?
Sure. So a little bit of this is theory crafting, of course, right?
Fine.
So I try not to think in terms of good and bad, right? We don't set out to make bad cards. We don't set out to make good cards. We understand that cards are
like less powerful.
Right. Well, even that, right? We try not to think of it in terms of just plain old, like that this card is always better than this card, right? We try to. It works out that way, of course, right? But we try to think in terms of situationalism. I just coined the phrase, but
situationalism.
Right? So situationalism. The theory craft behind it was that we could make a card, the powerful, awesome cards, less situationally powerful, more generally powerful, and they would have to be surrounded by more situationally powerful cards, right? Which some people say is euphemism for bad, and sometimes we mess up, and that's how it goes.
Like a situationally powerful card like Trench Run.
Like Trench Run, right? Or it could be worse.
Always useful, which is like Rebel Assault in the same objective set.
Right. Could be worse. It's worse, right? Like.
Yeah.
It's much worse. Coming soon to a set near you. So it was. We get to evaluate design cards as a cluster. I mean, that's obviously that. But the big bonus that I had that I envisioned was that we actually get to curb complexity creep in this game more so than other games, because complexity is one of the currencies that we theoretically designed by in an objective set. So the net complexity of every objective set should be about the same. Again, it doesn't work out that way. We're not perfect, but the idea is that a lot of collectible card games have a complexity ramp that goes like way up, right? You do most of your vanilla cards, your French vanilla cards, and a lot of your like general use of cards in the core, and then it just starts piling on the keywords.
Add 3 keywords, add an ability, add extra this, that, and the other.
Right, because either the design space is taken or et cetera, which, by the way, thanks to rotation, is going to be that
makes life way better.
Well, you're going to see a big change in that too, right? You're going to be able to keep the complexity down a lot. They didn't talk about that a lot at the presentation, which I wish they did, because that's totally true. Anyway, so Star Wars, we could keep the complexity down because we charge ourselves up. I charged myself, and Nate and Eric and I sat down. It's like, we had our meeting where I'd be like, all right, I'm charging you guys complexity dollars for every pack you put together, right? And that's your budget. And when you do a new pack, we have to make sure that a new cycle is not overall more complex than the core set, right? We, of course, we're not able to manage that completely, but we hopefully are not managing to keep the ramp fairly
1 degree
fairly
angle
smooth.
instead of 20 degree angle.
Right, which is important again for a casual core game.
Yeah. The objective set thing seems to, and we talked about this last time at GenCon, it ported in some form to Conquest, which now that game has come out, you've been walking around Worlds, you've seen people playing Conquest.
Yep.
And so before we kind of dive into maybe how those lessons translated to Conquest, how has it been for you as a designer to walk around as more or less an unknown to a lot of people, and just turning the name tag backwards and just watching the game and seeing how people are enjoying and engaging with it? How's that for you as a designer?
It's pretty awesome. Like, the Conquest is a game that I'm proud of for completely different reasons than any other game I've done. It's a game that, like, on its surface looks straightforward, and when you pitch it to somebody, it looks straightforward. It looks like we're just. Somebody told me yesterday, which I thought was a pretty good. They're saying, "Oh, you made a Blizzard game, right? Not the most innovative game, but really polished and really tight." I actually think we're doing more new things in Conquest than we're getting credit for, but it's this game about taking over planets with dudes, spending resources. But I think it's the most polished expression of that idea that we've had, and that how smoothly it plays, how few, not so much rules questions, but how few how few intuition problems people are having with the game. I love it, right? People just get it, they pick it up, they understand the strategy. It doesn't feel too abstract. There's not too much disconnect between theme and mechanics.
They don't know. It's not like they're confused on how to do well.
Right. Even though it's pretty new, right? Like, this is one of those games where the resource curve is pretty front-loaded, right? You start off with most of your stuff, and you have to earn later on, rather than ramping up mana-wise like you do in a lot of other games.
Yeah.
I thought that would actually be difficult for people, right? Because most people try to play this like Magic Gathering or even Cthulhu or something, and they just get slaughtered because they make too many bad decisions at the start. But it seems to be the subtle rubber banding mechanics we put in seem to be playing out pretty well. People are connecting with the factions pretty much how I imagined. The power level is a little different than I thought it was, but I still like how it's playing out. Like, Tau is more. People are recognizing the power level of Tau much faster than I expected them to. Like, they're a subtle. I thought they're a subtle faction. I thought that they would be trashed at first, and then people would pick up on it later. But I'm seeing a lot of them here.
Yeah, nice. Is there any lessons that you did learn from the objective set design in Star Wars that you then transferred to the Warlord signature squad whenever you're approaching that from a design perspective?
So, you know what's funny? I know, like, they look on the surface similar, but I pretty much didn't transfer anything philosophically from the objective set to the Warlord objective set. The design of that was actually a little bit more. I was a little bit more actually from my role-playing game background, which is, I know it sounds weird, but like, your Warlord is you, right? This is your dude. And in role-playing, when you play role-playing games, like computer role-playing games especially, right? You got your dude, your stuff, your skills. This is the stuff you get that nobody else gets to bring to the table. And then you have a common pool of world drops, etc. That's the model I had that I was going after, because that's how I figured that Warhammer players would be able to relate to this game. You have a dude, and your dude has guys that he's always with, right? Cool. You have your HQ unit and his lieutenants, his underlings. That's it. That was clear to me. And then a big common pool that everybody could draw from.
Nice.
So that was pretty much it. Like, it's. Even though, like, the idea that there were some fixed cards in Star Wars, I really didn't reference them that way.
Very cool. Very cool. The last thing that I'll get into with specific games, at least, is, so we just learned the Game of Thrones relaunch. The 2.0 is coming down the pipe.
Yep.
And you definitely had a hand in the core set, the LCG, first edition, all that kind of stuff. Are you now then kind of leading the charge on 2.0, or how is that going to work for you as a game designer who's been involved in first edition, and now we have 2.0 out, or right, coming soon?
So I actually didn't have much to do with second edition. I was there. I mean, I've been in the conversational loop, and I was there for the decision. I've been pushing very hard for them to do a second edition, because for all the reasons they talked about. But no, I mean, at this point, Nate is more qualified to design Game of Thrones cards than I am. I haven't even played for several years. It's not because I don't like the game. I just limited bandwidth. There's 7 LCGs and I designed 5 of them. So and I may or may not be working on other stuff. So
may or may not.
I'm actually coming at this one as a fan, but the really what they're doing with this. This is my opinion. I do not. My thoughts and opinions do not reflect that of FFG. Blah 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 blah. But based on what I've seen of the game, and I've seen the game. Like I've seen the game. I've seen the cards. Based on what I've seen do, that they're going way back to the first edition of the CCG Westeros edition. Like the spirit that we're trying to capture with that game. And Nate was a player way back then too. Like that old school, tactically interesting, complex but not rules complex game with it was really brutal and visceral and like just painful at times. Like they're going back to that and stripping out a lot of the crust that the games has accumulated, but also with the design technology that we've accumulated up until now. It's cleaner, it's more streamlined, the game doesn't get in the way of the fun as much as it's grown up to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play it again. When that core set comes out, I'm just going to play.
Excellent. You talk about design technology, which I think is an awesome term for basically the accumulation of things that you've learned over the years designing games and seeing them play out. What have you learned just as a designer? Is there any grand lessons or ponderings that you've had as a? I know you're quite the thinker. That's everyone.
$29.95.
Is there anything you'd like to share that maybe has been on your mind, or something that has clicked in your head recently?
Well, I don't know if this is a lesson or not. So there's no secret, right? There's no linear path from I'm a dude that likes thinking about games to
I'm a developer.
I'm a guy who makes the games, right? It's there's a famous meme of the picture that says this is idea and success, right?
Yeah.
And what people think it is and what it actually is, right?
Yeah.
That's it, right? And everybody's path is completely unique. The field is way more art than science. The science is actually fairly rudimentary. Like you play games for several years. If you've got a good analytical mind and good objectivity, you can pick up the rudiments of game design pretty easily. But the human element is so important. What you bring to a game, what your perspective, your point of view, your philosophy, what fun means to you is so important that there's no one way to do it. The way I make games is different from the way Nate makes games, different from the way Richard Garfield makes games, but they're all successful, right? So there's no one right answer. So that's lesson number 1, right?
Great.
There's no right answer, but there are lots of wrong answers, right? But you'll figure that in the first 2 years. The big one, the thing I'm on lately, I'm on a big inspirational kick lately, actually, and because I've been doing this for 17 years, as I was reminded of just before Essen, the last convention I went to. You pay a mental tax for every unfinished idea that you've got sitting around. So in the last 17 years, I've accumulated 100, 150 at least partially finished games or ideas for games or almost finished games that I'm going to finish that one day, or I'm going to go work on that one day, or whatever, or just a clever batch of mechanics that will eventually be a game. And there was a point where I was starting to, I'm not sure if I was actually starting to feel like I was treading in circles or anything like that, but I started getting a little bit of fatigue, right? I hit a point where it's I'm about to design another game. I don't ever want to hit that. So I don't know what happened, but at some point after last month at Essen, I took every game that I did, every game that I've been working on, without looking at it, all my files, and destroyed them. Destroyed all my prototypes, destroyed all of the files, got rid of all my backups, everything on the cloud is all gone. So I've now got nothing that's partially in the works. So basically got rid of my safety net completely. And since then, I feel as inspired as I did when I was like young and hungry and like I had something to prove and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like inspiration's everything, right? You've got to pretty much organize your life, your thoughts around being inspired, and you can't just be inspired by playing other games. You can't just be inspired by designing games. You got to take it from everywhere. And so now I just designed a game like on the plane ride home from Essen, which is like unlike anything else I've ever done. Right? I'm treating philosophically, I'm treating every game that's come out until now as a game that's designed by some other guy named Eric Lang, who's like better than me and more successful than me. And
The artist formerly known as Eric
the art,
Lang.
exactly, right? It's, how pretentious is that, right? But that's just, it's my little mantra, right? And so I got to make games that I can't just copy that guy's style because that's plagiarism. So I got to reinvent. I'm obviously influenced by this guy, and that's just how I think. But every game I do from here on in has got something to prove. Right? I'm not going to count on the past successes of those games. I don't want to make any more games in those styles for a while. So I'm going to do completely new stuff.
Awesome, man.
That's where I am right now.
Well, we are amped to see it. Thank you so much for joining us for a little chat, Eric. We really
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it, and you're an inspiration to us, at least, to listen to you talk like that.
I'm sorry I don't talk very much, I know, but
So thank you.
You just keep making games.
All right, everybody, that's been Eric Lang, game designer extraordinaire, and we're Team Covenant. And you can catch more from Worlds 2014 coming at you. Thanks, guys.
Ewoks.